Hey folks, welcome back. Today we're going to be making a leather cover for this axe. So this is going to be a pretty in-depth series. It's kind of sharing what I've learned doing this and a sheath design that I really like. So let's get started. To start making a sheath, we need a template first. So what I'm going to first do is just trace the outline of the axe, just like this. Now we only need to do the blade portion because that's where the cover is going to be. Just like that. Now what I'm going to do is around the perimeter, starting from the top, is I'm going to mark about 1/2 of an inch out from our tracing, and that will allow in the final sheath to be where the stitching and stuff goes. Now I'm not going to do it on the top edge because how these sheaths work is the axe actually slides down and then a top cover folds over to lock it in place. So now what I need to do is mark out where it's going to end. I think about here on the axe is pretty good. And then you can kind of just do a similar curve as to what's going on in the front. That's kind of just what I like. So that's 1/2 of it. So what I need to do is now cut it out, but leave some room up here to create this little tab that's going to fold over onto this thing. We're going to fold this over, mark out kind of where we want the end of the sheath to be. I like the little button we're going to put on here to be kind of in the middle, so we'll do maybe 2/3 of the way here. Which is about here. And we'll just give that a little cut. Just like that. And now what I can do is trace out the outline here. And then another thing I like to do is I like to just kind of bring these ends down to a point so it just looks really nice. So, something that looks kind of like that. Now how this works is when it's all said and done, the axe is going to fit down like this. And this tab is going to fold over and there's going to be a little button that keeps everything in there. Now that we have our template, we are ready to start putting this on some leather. The time has now come to transfer the design onto some leather. Now this is 7-ounce veg tan leather. And the reason I use vegetable tanned leather is as follows. First off, you can tool it. It wet forms very well. It takes dye very well. Veg tan leather is also, out of all leather you can buy, the most ecologically friendly because it's tanned with natural tannins. Unlike some methods of tanning like chrome tanning and stuff, they're really toxic and get into waterways and stuff. Out of all the methods of tanning, this is the least harmful. So that's why I choose to use this. Okay, so what we need to do is we need 2 pieces. Inside, on the flesh side of the hide, just the way we made the template is how I'm going to mark this out. And I always do all my tracing on the flesh side because if the template is off or if I need to make any changes, it's going to be a lot easier to hide any markings on the inside. Just like that. And now what I need to do is fold this tab down and actually flip the template over because the leather is different on each side. There's the flesh side and the hair side, and we want the hair side on the outside of both pieces. So I'm going to try and maximize my piece of leather by getting this really close, and then we'll just trace out this side just like this. So now we have our 2 pieces. What I'm going to do now is take a knife and cut pretty close to the outside, and I find it easier to give yourself a little wiggle room, and then it's a lot easier to cut accurately when you're not dealing with this whole piece of hide. Take our little razor blade here and then just cut out our pieces. Now that it is a more manageable piece, now I can cut on the line and get a really nice shape. Now, something I can't stress enough is to use sharp blades, because as soon as these things start getting dull, it's going to become hard to cut and it's not going to be controlled, and you're going to end up most likely making mistakes. That's one big thing I've learned about leather work, is use a sharp knife. So what I'm doing is I'm getting it close, and we're going to make it perfect in the next step. But I'm going to cut out this one first, then we'll be able to move on from there. Now here's something that I've come up with that I find really helpful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to super glue these pieces together, but only along the edges. And I'm going to be using some extra thick super glue. This stuff is magic. This is knife maker magic right here. So what I'm going to do is just put a little glue right along the perimeter, but only where I'm going to stitch, because we don't want some nasty glue that's not going to be stitched together here. And then we will lay it down on top of the other piece. Now I'm going to get something heavy. I like to use my granite surface plate here. Basically just going to clamp these two pieces together, give them maybe 5 minutes to really adhere, and then we're going to make sure the shapes are perfect. Alright, so we've given that a few minutes to dry. Alright, so we've given that a few minutes to dry. And the template and the pieces are pretty close. But what we're going to do now you can either use a razor blade or sandpaper, but I like to use my belt grinder. What I'm going to do is true up all these edges to make sure they're the same. So now we have a beautiful, perfect pattern here. What we're going to go ahead and do now is use this tool. Now this is an edging tool, and I'm going to just break all the edges here so they look really nice. After that, then we will start marking out our stitch hole locations, and then we can start punching our stitch holes. You'll also notice if there's any more pen mark on the inside that the edging gets rid of it. Another thing to mention when you're doing this, we don't need to do anything where it's going to be stitched, because that's going to create this really weird gap. So I'll just go to the point of where the stitching will start and then just kind of end it. Just like that. So only this little section. Now that being said, on spots that aren't going to be stitched, like the inside here, after I do my stitching holes, I can go in here and then break those corners as well. So all of the edges have been broken. Now what we're going to be using now is this little guy here. And this basically makes a groove to know where to put the stitches in. I don't know the official name for it, but I like it maybe about 1/4 of an inch away from this post. And basically this butts up against the edge right here, and then we drag it along, and that'll create just a little bit of a groove. Just like that. So I only do this on one side because I'm going to be punching through these to create the stitch holes in one shot. And if I do it on the back, if anything is off a little bit, it's going to show. So I only do it on the one side, and it's to give me a nice border to know where to put those stitch holes. So what I have in the arbor press is this pronged stitching tool. Pretty common to find. And this just makes it so I can go up and down very, very fast. And what essentially we're going to be doing, I have a piece of wood here, so I can poke through the leather into the wood. And what I'm going to be doing is just going around our entire border and just punching in our stitching holes. Now I like to use the two-pronged one. I seem to get more consistent results. There's one part of it, and I'm going to do the rest of the edge. Okay, so all of our stitch holes have now been poked. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is undo the super glue, undo the two pieces just like this. Then I can quickly just bevel those inside edges I wasn't able to get. What we're now ready to do is add a little bit of decorative tooling to the outside here. To tool veg tan leather, what you need to do is wet it first. And what I'm going to do now is I have a variety of different shaped tools, and I'm just going to do a design that I find appealing. Okay, so we're now ready to start dyeing these pieces. I find that the dye gets applied more evenly when the pieces are a little damp, so that's why I do that. I have a piece of cardboard on here because this stuff goes everywhere, and I'm just going to apply the dye everywhere very thick, so hopefully we don't end up with any light spots. They're easy to go back and cover up at the end, but it's easier to just put a lot on now and hopefully not need too much in the future. And I'm going to be doing both sides and all the edges of everything. Alright, there we go, folks. Those are going to now dry, and once they're dry we'll be able to continue on making this sheath. That's going to do it for us today. In part 2 I'm going to be going into depth on how I do the welt and how I stitch it and finishing and all that stuff. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you back tomorrow and finish up that sheath.